My name is Dr. Michael Brown, and this is 3 Words, a bite-sized podcast about the simple and yet very strategic and important decisions that all of us can make in order to be fully alive. In light of being fully alive, my wife and I, Teresa Brown, actually had a great conversation today about end-of-life decisions. We actually talk about drafting our will and all the other preparations that come into actually leaving a blessing to your family and not being a burden. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation as I did. Listen in now. So at this point in time, we've done more than 180 episodes of 3 Words podcast, but there are a few that I get particularly excited about. And obviously today I have in the studio my very dear wife of 32 plus years, who's going to join me for a really practical, engaging, and very informative conversation about 3 very significant words. But first, Teresa, my dear wife, our viewers and listeners, they've only seen you one other time when we actually had the conversation about remembering to grieve here in, not actually in this studio, but in a former place. But tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about our family.
Well, like you said, we've been married for 32 years, and for 29 of those, we've lived here in Bowling Green, Ohio. So we're definitely townies here now. And we have raised all of our children, or one of was born in Kansas, but everybody else was born here. And we have 9 children and 3 grandsons, so a very happy season to be a part of right now. And our children range in age between 16 and 30. And our family also was licensed foster care providers for almost 20 years. And in that capacity, we've had 21 children kind of in and out of our home, some staying for as little as 3 weeks, some for 3 years, and 5 of them we got to adopt. And so they're with us forever. And so we really value our family and our family time, and it's just really important to both of us. Very important to us.
And we talk a lot about this idea of leaving a legacy. Obviously, we care deeply about that. We've done several episodes around this topic. We talk about that as a family on a regular basis. But in light of our hopes, in light of our dream to leave a legacy, we thought this would be a fantastic conversation to have around, sweetheart, I'll give you the opportunity to share the 3 words for today's episode.
The 3 words are draft your will.
So very, very specific and practical, drafting your will. Now, it's interesting as we have this conversation, for some people, they're like, oh, I don't want to think about my will. I don't want to think about these end-of-life decisions. And yet for both of us now in our mid-50s, it is time to be able to have this conversation. And I think there'll be very, very many people who will listen in, viewers and listeners, who might be thinking, wow, I want to hear what the Browns have to say and how they think about these things. But why are these words and this idea of drafting a will so personally significant to you?
Well, as you shared, our kind of overarching theme for our marriage and our family is to leave a legacy. And we've done in the past 30 years of parenting, we've done a lot in the areas of creating family memories, family traditions, family jokes that are told over and over again and that you're usually the brunt of. But we've created all these things for our family for the here and now. And one of the things that we also want to do as we leave a legacy is not only for what we're doing now, but also we want to be a blessing when we're gone too. And so drafting your will is a way that I feel like we can really bless our family later on, not just now.
So be a blessing, but not a burden.
Right.
Because obviously if we wait to have some of these conversations or even wait to put some of these things in place, the blessings that we provided will actually become curses down the road because we haven't taken time to prepare.
Right. And everything from the actual process of drafting a will, which we actually created a very basic one right after our daughter was born, because we had been advised that, if anything happened to us, you want to make sure that she goes to who we want her to go to. And we've, over the years, since we now have 9 children, we've kind of tinkered with that and modified it, but it's never been quite as specific as what we've recently been on a journey doing. And even seeing some of your family, my friends, who have had parents pass away, and there's obviously the grief and the trauma of dealing with that loss. But a lot of times people don't even have time to sit in that for long because they're trying to, work through an estate and packing up decades of memories and trying to figure out what to do with what and where are the files and where do they bank and all of that. Yeah. And that's where I feel like it could really be a burden as well. And so that's where just having some forethought on our part I feel like is a way that we can really bless them even now as we're sharing these things with them.
I'm going to hit pause just for a second in my conversation with my dear wife, Teresa, to simply acknowledge the reality that some of these conversations around end-of-life decisions and preparations can be a little bit hard and for some people a little bit unsettling and scary, but they're important ones. So if you feel like you have a friend or family member that could really benefit from what Teresa and I are talking about today, we would encourage you to forward this episode to them. Now back to the conversation. Well, and this will be no surprise to those who are viewing and listening to our podcast and those who have gotten to know me a little bit and even meeting you, for some of them for the very first time today. I think it's fair to say that you and I are extremely different, and we approach life differently. And I am adventurous and free-spirited, and I'm just like, let's roll with the punches. And you're like, we need to button some things down. And you have for years said we need to kind of pull these things together. And obviously the daughter you were speaking about that we made the first will for, Lauren, is now 30 years old, the mother of our 3 grandsons, now married to Dylan. And I'll never forget when Dylan started kind of like getting involved in our family. Obviously, he spends a lot of time in the financial realm, and he works in finance and he works in business, and that's kind of his sweet spot. He's like, have you thought about your estate planning and all of these kids and this house, and just tell me more about your will, and have you started saving for retirement? I'm like, we're not retiring. We're going to work till we're 500 years old, right? So it took a lot of conversations, even for me, to say, okay, let's get serious. Let's begin to make some of these decisions. And we've been amazingly blessed to actually hire someone who is not just a financial planner, but is helping us think about everything, life insurance, future, investments, wills, estates for some of our kids who are minors, as well as, what kind of wealth do we need? And if something happened to me, what would you need? If something happened to you, what would I need?
Exactly.
Just questions. And it's been very thorough. I mean, you recall the first of several meetings with this group of folks, lasted hours.
Right. And it was over, if they're the experts and we are clueless. And so they were asking us questions and alerting us to the fact that we should create this or draft this or secure this. And they were things that I'd never even thought of and probably never would have. And so I'm so thankful that they were able to give us some direction on things like you said, like we've obviously amended our will, and we've added, like you said, we're working on adding to our life insurance. Our policies that we had were from 30 years ago when we first got married and full-time jobs, and so much has changed in our lives and so much of our needs have changed. And so things like that, where they've really helped us to realize there's a lot. I mean, we don't need to panic about it. We don't need to, be freaked out, like over obsessed with it. But if we're wise, then we really will help prepare our kids for the future. Well,
and you obviously know our son Logan and I did an episode in 3 Words Podcast entitled "You're Gonna Die," and that's the reality. The day is going to come when you're going to be gone, when I'm going to be gone. We don't know who's going first. Maybe we'll go at the exact same time. I mean, there's no way to know. We can't control that. But the reality is that we are going to pass on from this life to the next. And reality is our friend. I mean, in many ways, we try to avoid that reality. But by avoiding that reality, the reality doesn't go away. It will just create a situation down the road, as you said, where we will be then a burden. Because of our lack of preparation, our lack of forethought, we will be a burden to the very family we've tried to have amazing experiences, protect even, that we will actually do harm to them because of our lack of preparation. So I feel very proud of us because I feel like we've made some big strides in this regard.
For sure.
I probably, in retrospect, wouldn't have waited until we were in our mid-50s to do some of these things. But it is a good time because we're both healthy. We're both in great spots in our life. We feel good about our family. We feel good about our marriage. We feel good about our health. And so it's a great time to be able to have these conversations. But probably even earlier would have been better because obviously we're regarding investment and wealth management and retirement and things. Obviously there would have been different decisions we would have made, but I'm really proud of us. But knowing you, there's probably still things that you're hoping as you think about this idea of leaving a legacy and being prepared that you're like, hey, babe, can we do more also this stuff as well? And what are some of those things?
Well, I think a lot of those things are just, I think if something happened to you and you either were gone or unable to manage things. I just feel like there's a lot of things that I need to continue to know of yours and of mine as well if I go before you. So things like passwords for, our computers and our phones and subscriptions that we have. I have a subscription to the iCloud. Every month I get charged for extra storage and, an exercise app or, just all the different things that we have. And if I go before you go and you don't know about those or don't know the passwords to get in there and cancel, then that just would be, month after month, a strain, I think. So something like that, the subscriptions, the passwords. I'd love to continue to get our files a little more organized. And we are organized, but we'll have like a bin or a crate of medical files, but not separated by person or, things like that I think it would be helpful for us, but also for our kids.
So wait a second. So piles are not the same as files? As you know, I love my piles.
Organized files. Piles, yes.
Right. But you're wanting files and you're wanting to kind of really put this, in very specific organized manner.
The cars and the titles and even the repair work on the cars, that we have, that we own, that are still our children's using and things, just so that we know things are in order. If something just came out of nowhere and happened, we wouldn't necessarily know where even to start with some of those things. And we probably wouldn't need to start with them right away, but I think that they would pile up and they would just cause added stress for each of us or for our children if we left them behind with things just kind of not buttoned down and not known. So I think it's also important, like you mentioned, that we talk to our kids. We've done podcasts on these things. I think including our kids, all of our children now, our youngest is 16, so they're all age appropriate. Wouldn't recommend that for, your 2 and 3-year-old children, but they know most of what our plans are for when we pass and who would be in charge of what. And I think that probably provides them with some security. And if something did happen all of a sudden, they would at least have something to go on.
And to extend it even a little bit further, you and I have chatted a little bit about, and we started talking about, what do we want to be true of our burial? Do we want to be buried in a casket? Do we want to be cremated? You and I have purchased plots on the campus of Bowling Green State University. And
at your prompting, yes.
Yes. Well, again, I think a lot about this. So there are some things I'm giving forethought to,
right.
And other things where I'm just like, we'll figure that out later. But I think it goes back to some of the things that even I train in as I train leaders, as I help people manage their lives, design their weeks. I want to make sure I'm embodying what I express. And one of the most important principles that I share, honestly, all over the globe is this idea that making sure that in your 168 hours a week, that you're not just focused on the urgent, but you're also investing in the important. And so some of the things we're talking about today, if I can use Dr. Stephen Covey, the late Dr. Stephen Covey's language around the quadrants and the time management matrix, is in quadrant 2, which are things that are extremely important, but are not urgent at all. And so sometimes the things that are most important but not urgent oftentimes are forgotten or delayed or postponed. And so I think what you're doing is you're saying, hey, take some time when you're unhurried and when things are not rushed, and actually pause and make sure that we're doing not just the urgent, but also the important. And end of life and arrangements of this nature should begin to happen probably far earlier for many of us than we even anticipate. It was interesting. Father's Day was just recently. We had some of our kids out to Father's Day, and our son Logan, who I mentioned, we did the podcast on You're Gonna Die, the 3 Words podcast episode. We started talking about, hey, we just are upgrading our insurance and we're getting blood work done and we're seeing how we're going to be rated and all those things. And Logan and his wife Dea were like, talk to me about insurance, like life insurance. Now they're in their early 20s. And that was kind of probably the first conversation we've had with them about the importance of life insurance. And I'm so glad we did, because I know Logan has started thinking more about that, because even in your 20s, why not have life insurance?
Right.
Especially when it's very inexpensive. And it does provide even a safety and security blanket for your people that you love. Even though at this point they don't have children, they have each other. And so to have a little bit of a cushion if something were to happen, of course, tragically, it would be unexpected, but why not start thinking and talking about those things even in your 20s and in your 30s? And maybe if we can encourage our listeners, no later than your 40s, because again, life is short, unpredictable, and we don't always know what tomorrow's going to bring.
Yeah, for sure.
So any final thoughts or encouragement that you have for, I mean, obviously I'm a father, you're a mother, you're a wife, I'm a husband, and we think about our families, and obviously we talked about leaving a legacy, but is there anything that you want to encourage our viewers or listeners, or even final thoughts that you're thinking about that maybe we haven't had a chance to mention yet?
Well, just the whole idea with leaving a legacy and not being a burden. I think that we spend a lot of time preparing our kids to be independent, and perhaps we've spent less time preparing them for us being gone. And so I feel like we've done a good job. We've made some great, not just first steps, but we've been working on this for about a year now with some direction and some expertise help. And I think that in the end will help them to feel more blessed in the midst of the grief, perhaps, of when we're gone, that we're giving forethought into this as well, and not just the here and now, like you said.
Yeah. Well, sweetie, thanks for being back in the studio. I know that you're not necessarily the public speaker in the family, but you have so much insight and wisdom to offer, and it's good for our listeners and viewers to know and to get to experience firsthand my better half. So thanks for being here, and we look forward to our next episode together.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks again for joining us for today's episode. We feel really blessed that we had the opportunity to share some really important information with you, some very practical insights. As a part of our 3 Words podcast family, we hope that you're encouraged, that you're inspired by our conversations together. If you'd like to stay more connected to us and even go deeper in our relationship and allow us to continue to speak into different areas and dimensions of your life, we would encourage you to go to dmbcoaching.com/subscribe. It is there where you can actually offer us your email address, where we can send you on a regular basis our digital newsletter written by none other than Dr. Tyler Swans, who's been on several of these episodes. We continue to provide curriculum and content that would help reach into the different areas of your life to bless you and to help your family and your friends become the better version of themselves, as well as for you to be more fully alive. So all that to say, we love being connected to you, and we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.